All right, guys, so I think it's finally time. This video, we're going to be going over both SNS Spear as well as Greatsword Spear, because those are the two specs that I've been putting a lot of time into and building out. I feel pretty comfortable about making this video now that I have finished the sets. I've PvP'd small scale, large scale. I've done a lot of PvE, all that stuff. So this is going to be a little bit more of a condensed breakdown or review of pretty much what I'm doing, with a bigger focus on how I'm actually building the set, and go a little bit more into detail, or focus rather, on the build itself rather than the actual gameplay. Okay, so let's talk about the actual builds here for both SNS and for Greatsword. I'm actually running the same 5-piece gilded set, and I've tried 3 different sets and variations within the 3. I've been trying Shock Commander, I've been trying the full DPS one for Greatsword Spear, and I've also tried Gilded. I think Gilded is the way. Some of you guys may have heard, Kanon, I heard you're trying the Gilded set. What's going on with it? I haven't really been hearing people run this set. Honestly, guys, I think this is going to be the new meta set for brawler / endurance based builds, because it's really good. It's really good. So let's get into why it is. All right. If we are going to start this conversation going over the Gilded set gives you Fortitude. It's the only set that gives you Fortitude, and Spears are the only weapons that give you Fortitude. This allows you to get 60 Fortitude, which gives you a ton of endurance. Every point of Fortitude you pump, you are getting not only CC resistance, but you're also getting endurance. And when you take this all the way to 60, you're getting 220 endurance. You're getting magic defense, which you didn't get anywhere previously. If you're going Shock Commander, any of these attributes, none of these attributes were giving you magic defense. The only place you were getting magic defense was from your accessories. Even your armor pieces give you melee and ranged. So a lot of you guys that have been actively PvPing, you probably know there are mages that will just absolutely melt you, even if you are playing SNS, if you're not timing your Q blocks correctly, right? Fortitude is actually giving you that magic defense, and it's also giving you more endurance. It's also giving you heavy attack evasion 100, which directly counters the 50 strength 100 heavy attack chance that a lot of players go for. So Fortitude, I wasn't 100% sure how this would feel in large scale PvP or in small scale PvP. It just looked really good on paper, because if you look at my stats here, it's kind of insane. This build right here, I have 1500, 1600 endurance. If I change out my necklace, I'm pushing 1700 endurance, 1700 endurance. That's a lot. But more importantly, it's not melee endurance, it's magic endurance. I'm swapping that. On top of that, I'm able to build a respectable amount of melee endurance. And this, I think, is a way better stat distribution. Outside of the fact that large scale PvP is clearly more dependent, your survivability is clearly more dependent on magic and range defenses. Outside of that fact, Fortitude gives you CC resist. So it's incredibly, I shouldn't say incredibly, it's a lot easier to stack collision resistance. As you can see right here, I have 754. That does not include the extra collision resist that I'm going to get from this passive right here, which, by the way, also gets buffed. This is 360 when stacked up to 3 times. In KR, this changes to 360 flat, no stacking, you just immediately get 360 out the gate, which is fantastic. That's going to immediately take my 750 over 1000, past 1000. I also have Unyielding Sentinel, which also gives me 400. Now I'm at 1400 collision resistance on Greatsword Spear, which is kind of insane. By the way, if you're curious, Nimble Steps also gives you ranged evasion, which is irrelevant to my build specifically, but in case you are playing, like, let's say a dagger, that's some pretty good build variety. That isn't coming in the game until later. Now, CC resistance, right? So what does this mean? This means that Greatsword dagger users, if you do get engaged on, they are not going to be able to one-shot you with 745 endurance, especially because they are not going to be able to ground you. They're not going to be able to Shadow Strike, Ascending Strike you straight to the ground. They're going to have to set up their CC by stunning you, which you have a trinket for, and you also have your Q block. So you have your Q block, you have your trinket, there's counterplay around it. And even if you eat it, this endurance is likely going to save you from getting one comboed, because you're a Greatsword user. You also have a respectable amount of HP. If you're taking Da Vinci, you're at 20k with this build. So This just makes you a lot tankier when it comes to ranged and magic. And the defenses that you have, sure, you're giving up 300, 400-ish endurance from melee, but you don't really need that 300-400 endurance is way better going to ranged and magic, because 745 is enough with the collision resist, right? This is just a way better setup. The downside to 5-piece gilded is obviously the passive damage, right? If you're not running 2-piece Shadow Harvester, you're losing the crit damage. You're losing the 150 heavy if you're not going general, but you don't need that. If we're talking about Greatsword Spear specifically, you don't need that damage. I assure you. I tested my damage against other DPS classes. Precision dash into Ascending Strike into Guillotine, it was one-shotting. Okay, and if it didn't one-shot because it didn't heavy and or crit, whatever that may be, that was okay, because the stun following it would allow me to one combo. That's not a problem. I was still fast. I had AoE damage. I have single target burst damage, and I'm tanky. It's just really, really good. Now, on top of the juiced endurance, we also have 560 skill damage resistance. When you have your spear in your main hand, the bottom mastery tree will give you 80 skill damage resistance. This is incredible. And this skill damage resistance is a stat that not a lot of people actually understand. So let me just, excuse me, break this down for you here, okay? Skill damage resistance is essentially net damage mitigation. Just think of it that way. Now, the formula for this is skill damage divided by skill damage plus 1000. Now, you have to offset the skill damage boost. In most cases, an average number for DPS is 350 skill damage, right? Most players, and feel free to look at your build and see how much skill damage resistance you have. Most players are running at somewhere between 300 to 400 skill damage resistance. Let's just take 350 skill damage resistance, for example, okay? If you have 350 skill damage resistance and the target that's attacking you has 350 skill damage boost, they offset. Pretty simple. If you have 400 skill damage resistance, a lot of you guys watching this video might, let's just call it 420. 420 is kind of a soft spot people are at. We have to reduce that. So 420 minus the 350 skill damage boost that most players have, that'll give you a net total of 70 skill damage resistance on your target. So if we take 70 and we divide that by 1070, that gives us 6.5, a 6.5% damage mitigation to that attack. If I hit you for 100 damage, if you have this skill damage resist on me, I'm going to hit you for like 94 damage, 93, 94 damage. Okay, just think of it that way. That's kind of like a basic TLDR breakdown of it, okay? 6.5% damage, 6.5% damage mitigation. With my 560, however, if we take 560 and we subtract 350 from that, I have 210 skill damage resistance on your attack. We divide that by 1,210. I have a 17.4 rounded percent damage mitigation from your attacks. I'm mitigating, in this case, 11%, 10 to 11% more damage than you. So the difference between, again, this depends on how much skill damage boost the target has, but if I have 560 skill damage resistance and you have 400 skill damage resistance, I'm mitigating 11%, roughly, give or take, 11% more damage than you. That's pretty damn significant, okay? So when you look at this, you have to keep that in mind when you're trying to figure out ways to not die. You're an endurance build. You want to try and figure out a way to not die, because that is ultimately what kills Greatsword Spears. I would not recommend Greatsword Spear for a player that knows they're going to PvP, but knows they're not going to actually get maxed out gear, because Greatsword Spear, what I've noticed, takes a lot of gear to come out. Like, you need everything. You need your runes. You need everything, obviously, to +9. You need your skill damage resistance. And when all of that comes together, the build is fantastic. I'm totally okay with giving up the damage passives. The attack speed passive is pretty nice. This right here, 1600, it feels great. On paper, it looked great, but now that I've experienced it in Siege, Arena, small scale, GVGs, sorry, I can't think of the name, inter-server wars, everything, Riftstones, Boonstones, my gosh, it feels great. So this is pretty much the build that I'm going for, or that I have put together, and I would highly recommend it. And I would go as far as to say I think it's best in slot. There are a couple of options here. You can swap out the Blessed Templar Cloak for Supreme Devotion if mana is a little bit of an issue. Even with morale, it can be with large-scale PvP if you're not dying. This also gives you crit. Crit is a little bit of an issue with this build, especially if you're going to be going Thunderstorm Necklace versus this build, which goes Icy Necklace. I'm currently running Icy Necklace. I think it's okay to not to get the extra endurance here because again, you're already pretty damn tanky. So I think the crit here is pretty decent value. Not that you need it, because remember, in the passive tree, you're going to be getting additional crit, not only from your Greatsword with Cold Warrior, but you're also going to be getting it from this passive right here, where every third attack you're getting 820 crit, which is incredible. Okay, so this is a build that you can absolutely afford to sacrifice crit on, and you absolutely want to sacrifice damage for more survivability. If you don't have the survivability and you go full glass cannon, you are going to melt, and that's what this build is right here. This was the first build that I put together. This is maximum damage. We got the Swirling Essence Robe for the heavy attack chance. We got 2-piece Shadow Harvester, and we've got 2-piece Field General. This is about as much endurance as I could possibly stack with this. There's a couple of iterations when you're going Juno Boat with a Dentist. You're able to get 1100 1k magic endurance. With a respectable amount of melee endurance. Let me tell you, you feel the difference. Okay, you absolutely feel the difference, and the extra damage you're getting from this set is not worth it. If you're going for PvE, this is absolutely BIS. You definitely want to be going this right here. I would go as far as to say a Dentist Juno Boat specifically is best in slot for PvE. This is probably as good as it gets if you're going to be running PvE with Greatsword Spear. This is incredibly good. I do have this set built out. Now, let's quickly talk about SNS. When it comes to the SNS, originally I had the 5-piece Shock. The issue with Shock, whether it's Greatsword, whether it's SNS with Greatsword or any other build, the problem with Shock is you lack magic. Now, it's 800 magic. This is with runes. Most of you guys aren't going to even be at this stage, and it's going to take a while to be at this stage. And even at 800, it doesn't feel great. 800 endurance really just at the end of the day doesn't feel great, and there's a lot of magic. Half the attacks are magic, almost. You know, you've got the ranged, which you kind of got covered with this, but you just melt to magic. It's totally possible to sustain for 2 reasons. Number one, if you're Q blocking the right skills, you have a pocket healer, and the other way to sustain is, when it comes to Shock specifically, is the block chance, right? Block chance is incredibly good. That is also big damage mitigation. So the trade-off from Gilded versus Shock is the 18 damage reduction, which, to be perfectly honest, it's whatever. It's the 10% shield block chance. That's what it is. You have a passive chance to mitigate damage with your shield block chance. When you have counter barrier up, this 50% turns into like 85%, roughly, give or take, with this build specifically. But it's a lot of damage mitigation when it comes to the shield block, okay? So it's like, what is better? And as someone that has a full Shock piece set, or a Shock set rather, and has tested SNS Spear with it, and has now tested a full Gilded set, 5-piece Gilded set with SNS. Gilded is way better for large-scale PvP. It is absolutely better. This endurance that you have here is just way too good. It's fantastic. 480 skill damage resistance. We're not getting the extra 80 skill damage resistance from the Spear because you have to have the SNS in your main hand. But this is absolutely it. I think the trade-off is worth it. A big part of it is not only are you getting 50%, almost, depending on how you're stat prioritizing, not only are you getting 50% more endurance, you're also getting endurance with magic rather than melee. You're also getting another 200 magic defense. You're also getting another 100 heavy attack evasion, and you're also getting more CC resistance, which allows you to sacrifice some CC resistance because SNS comes with a passive that increases your CC resistance by almost up to 200 with Jared's Patience, right? So you don't have to full send it. This one right here, it's a little bit on the low end. This is the collision resist build with the Templar cloak. This has you at 854. This is going to put you over 1,000. This gives you way more survivability against those random greatsword daggers that might pounce on you, and this will also allow you to immune pushes, pulls, as well as tornadoes. Obviously, if you sit in multiple tornadoes, you will get knocked out, but this will allow you to dive and ignore some of them if you're going through the tornadoes and resist a good amount of them. On top of that, you also get some nice attack speed, which has always been an issue with SNS builds. However, what I wasn't able to really solve was the crit problem unless you go 5-piece gilded with Cherno. I feel like Cherno is a very good option if you are trying to deal damage. As you can see, I was able to get the crit up to 784. The problem, however, is you're giving up block chance and you already don't have shock. So if you are like a small scale skirmisher, sure. Otherwise, I would probably stick to maybe like a Nirma or even a Cornelius that gives you more block rate to cover the lack of block rate by going gilded. The other issue with SNS, when it comes to gilded, is that you lack hit. You're pretty much at the bare minimum 600 to 700 hit range. In some cases, you might even be in the 500s range. We've already talked about how that is fine. It is okay. I try to ideally push for 700, which covers like the random evasion buffs that some targets have when they're not running melee evasion. But at the end of the day, even with 500 to 600 melee hit, you should still be fine, especially because your damage is coming from AoE anyway. You should be running the ignite build and throwing your javelins. You're not going to be missing on an SNS building your ember stacks, and when you throw them into a chunk of people, you're still going to be melting them, right? Any target that doesn't have melee evasion, you're just still going to be melting them. This is not like a single target burst spec, right? That's not what this class is designed to do. So you can get away with 600 hit chance. I've already done it, guys. It's possible. Totally fine. Okay. But that is the downside. That is what you're giving up. Sure, you can try to build into getting a little bit more hit, but you are sacrificing something else, be it endurance, be it CC resistance. And I just don't want to do that with this build. I think endurance and CC resistance is the main focus of this build. And when you put it together, guys, it feels really good. With all that out the way, the TLDR summary is this. I think gilded is fantastic, but if you go gilded, you need runes, you need everything, you need skill damage resistance, and whether or not you're using it with a greatsword or an SNS spear, pairing spear with those two weapons, it feels great for both. It really does. It's incredibly tanky. I think it's way better for large scale PvP. I have zero regrets going into gilded, and I would definitely recommend it for you guys. Now, between the two, greatsword and SNS spear, personally, I'm going to stick with greatsword spear. I think this class, when it comes to just building it together, man, there are some additional options even outside of this build here. It just works. The two weapons definitely synergize together. The attack speed, the heavy attack, the CC, everything just really works. With the SNS, it was kind of a pain in the ass to put this build together because it was just missing something. And even the best builds that I could put together, it was still lacking somewhere. And on top of that, the gameplay with the SNS spear, it just feels outside of like the chain hook, it feels more difficult to stick to the target. I'm just slower. Not to mention I have a Queen Bellendir SNS and it essentially does shit for me, jack shit, versus Tevin's Greatsword does synergize fairly decently with Queen Bellendir Serrated Spike, which is what I have. Both of these builds, you do not need arc boss weapons. You absolutely don't. Okay, but Greatsword Spear it just works, and it's incredibly rewarding. Very soon, we are going to be getting this ability reduced. 45-second cooldown with a 6-second 4K shield. This gets now reduced. In Korea, it's already been reduced. We're going to get this in January. Hopefully, I shouldn't say January. I don't know. Hopefully, we get it in January. I would assume we get it in January. This cooldown goes down to 25 seconds. After your cooldown reduction, most people are going to have this at around like 18, 19 seconds. 6-second duration on a 4K shield. Forget about everything else. 4K shield, 6-second duration, excuse me, on a 19-second cooldown is absolutely insane. On top of this, we are talking about SNS specifically, where you are lacking the hit, which again, even 5-600 for tier 1 right now is fine. This, you have the option to remove the CC resistance and get additional hit. In arenas, this is going to be incredibly good. Incredibly good, especially considering SNS Spear. Again, just so many options with this. You can go full hit build and get like 22 to 2400 hit. And with this buff, when this gets buffed, if you take the option that gives you hit rather than CC resistance, you're talking about like 2600 to 2800 hit during that window, right? So as is, 410 CC resistance, 4K shield, 6-second duration, 19-second cooldown. Let that sink in. This already, the sustain for this build already feels good. And then you add on the shield on top of it, it's pretty damn solid. Let me see if I can actually find the hit build that I had here. Here's the hit build that I had before. Okay, as you can see, with Greatsword and main hand, you have 2200 hit. You add 400 hit to that with Unyielding Sentinel, 6-second duration. We're talking about just, there's no way. 2600 hit is just insane. Anyways, Greatsword Spear, I think is just overall, I'm going to have to say it's better than SNS Spear. SNS Spear can absolutely work. It can be pretty good. However, I think Greatsword Spear, when you have the gear for it, top tier. Don't know what else to say. If you want to play a melee DPS class that doesn't rely on evasion, and you can soak and you can brawl, you can nuke, you can move, you're resisting CCs. Greatsword Spear has that potential. It just takes gear to come online. Anyways, guys, that's pretty much everything I have to share in this video. I'm not sure really how long this video is going to be, but I hope you found that helpful. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video. Oh, I did forget to mention in my latest stream, now that I'm done with this build, I asked my chat to vote on what class I should play next, like an off meta. And the vote has come through. I'm going to be playing SNS Crossbow. Ignore this. Please don't look at this and be like, oh, this is the build he's going. Ignore it. This is just me putting things together. We're cooking. We're trying to cook up a build here. Okay, guys. But if you guys would like to check that out, we're going to have fun with this on stream. Don't forget to follow me on Twitch. And see you in the next video for real this time.